evening and welcome to the first Let's Talk About It show of 2021. I'm Rox Berkey with my co-host Guy Worthy. Hi, Guy.
Hi, Rox. Let's Talk About It is the Rave Waves production where we take on the controversial or popular topics of the day and relate those topics to books that can be found in our RRBC catalog. Written by our awesome RRBC members. This way we can open up a much needed dialogue platform while also promoting our RRBC member books when those are related.
So RRBC is a family-friendly show, sharing opinions within families, allowing for differing viewpoints which are respected, even if sometimes they're not agreed to by everyone, is how we operate within our RRBC family. We appreciate and want your opinions and questions as a part of this open and transparent conversation.
RRBC is best known for only promoting our own members via Rave Waves, but Nani created this show, Let's Talk About It, to be a different kind of show. We'll be opening up this forum to outside guests who can enlighten as well as educate us on some of the topics of the day. Today we have a guest personally impacted by losing her father a mere 3 weeks after his COVID-19 diagnosis in November of 2020. We would like to welcome Hina Patel. Hi, Hina.
Hi, everyone.
We're so honored to have you join us today.
And I appreciate you inviting me.
So audience, we'll be opening up the floor for questions and comments for today's guests throughout the show, but your mics will remain muted until that time. If you'd like to be acknowledged, please, just a little wave of your hand will get our attention. We also encourage you to use the chat gallery for any questions or comments throughout the show, as we'll be checking there for those as well. COVID-19 and the reality of what we can do to stop the spread and minimize the heartache is top of mind for all of us as we enter 2021. So, Guy, I think we're ready to start talking.
Agreed. Hina, first, we'd like to offer our condolences on the loss of your father, and we greatly appreciate you being here today. Can you share with us when your father was diagnosed with COVID-19 and how he contracted it, please?
Yes, so this goes back to October 29th or 30th is the day he was hospitalized. So how this all started was at the beginning of October when my dad's brother-in-law had passed away from a non-COVID related issue. And I remember at that time, we didn't want my mom and dad going to the funeral because it was down in Florida and the cases in Florida were going on. And we had an argument that you don't need to go down there. And he's like, well, this is my sister. I need to be there to support her. And at the end of the day, my dad was going to do what he wants to do. So he and my mom went down there for the funeral. And my dad had my mom decided to stay and help my aunt for a few weeks. Is adjusting to her new life, along with another one of my dad's sisters. And my dad came home during that time. So fast forward about 2 weeks and my mom comes home from Florida and she's not feeling well. She's sick and she said, there were a lot of people coming in and out of the house during the 2 weeks when she was there. And then in hindsight, it means that perhaps somebody who was positive came into the house and spread it to everybody else. But she brings it back with her, and that was again, we're back in like that last week of October or mid-October, and it was we were noticing the week after because she was already sick, and my dad started feeling sick as well as my brother. So my brother and my sister-in-law also live in the same house, and I remember getting a call from my younger sister. I was working that morning. It was a Thursday. It's the day before Halloween. And Daddy sounds really short of breath when I talk to him. Will you call and check in on him? And so I FaceTime him. And I said, Daddy, are you okay? Because they'd gone to the doctor that previous Monday. And the doctor at that time, instead of doing a COVID test or a COVID swab did an antibody test. And so at that time, an antibody test is not going to come back positive. So writes for just, doesn't write for anything except some vitamin C and zinc, and said maybe it's probably the flu. And they did a flu test. And again, that was both my mom and my dad. And so anyway, that Thursday, I call my dad, talk to him on FaceTime, and I can tell he's a little short breath. And I said, Dad, will you check your pulse ox? And he's like, yeah, I've got one in the car. Let me go get it. And I'll call you back. I was like, no, I'm going to stay on FaceTime until you go get it. And again, I remember everything. And he comes in, and he's trying to, he's pulling it out of the package, and he's trying to put the battery in, and I can see his hands shaking. And so like for me to see that, I start getting a little worried. And once he gets it checked, it says 89%. And I panic. And in hindsight, I wish I wouldn't have panicked. But I did. And I said, Daddy, you need to get to an ER right now. I said, hang up. And I called my sister-in-law, and I said, take Dad. Or I called my brother actually first, and he's sick in bed, but I didn't realize how sick he was. And he's like, I can't go anywhere right now. So I called my sister-in-law, who was out at work. And I said, you need to take Dad to the ER right now. And she said, well, I just happened to be on the way home. So she takes him to the ER. And, the sad thing is she can only drop him off. She can't go in with him because of the hospital protocols. Nobody can go in there with him. So for her, that's the last time she saw my dad in person. So that, there's all these little things that we all went through. So he gets hospitalized. He didn't have a room in the hospital at that time. So he spent 24 hours in the ER. And I know he was miserable. We called, and he's like, I'm cold. And he's like, I'm ready. I just want to come home. And we're like, well, let's see what they say. And they call us and say, your dad's COVID test is positive. So that's when we found out that day. A week prior to that was actually when we found out that my aunt, the same aunt whose husband had passed away from Florida, she had also come back with my mom, but she went to her sister's house in Charlotte. She had been hospitalized a week before with COVID. She was positive. So we'd gotten the call that she was positive, and that's when we took my parents, my parents went to the doctor that following Monday to get tested, but again, they never got tested. So Dad gets admitted, finally gets a room next day, and we noticed, this is on a Friday, that my brother is just not feeling well. I go in his room. At this point, I live in Atlanta. My parents live in North Carolina. I jump in the car and I get to Fayetteville. I just jump in the car and I drive 6 hours. And I've got my mom sick, my brother's sick, my dad's in the hospital. Was it reckless of me to go? Well, I took precautions. I was masked up. I had a face shield on. I was actually a participant in one of the vaccine trials. And I knew, just because of my background as a pharmacist, that I'd gotten the real deal, just because I'd gotten the side effects of just having fevers and all that. So I felt I could go because I had a little protection. And again, full precautions while I was there, constantly washing my hands and just a mask the whole time. But that weekend, my brother's not feeling well. He starts having fevers, 102. We were giving him Tylenol around the clock. And, all day Saturday, this fever, not eating. All the doctor, they put him on antibiotics. He actually went to the ER that Friday and they sent him home. And his COVID test was negative. And so then by Sunday night, we are so worried. He's got a temperature of 103. And we take him back to the emergency room that Monday morning. And they said, do you want to be admitted? And we're like, because he even told me I'm starting to feel loopy. That just a sign of dehydration because of all the sweating and the fevers that he was having. And the Tylenol every 6 hours, it didn't cut it. So he gets admitted. We never tell my dad. They were like just a few rooms down from each other. Mm-hmm. We didn't want Dad worrying. So Dad had been in the hospital. And Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I call him every day. We check in on him. He started on those cocktails that everybody's talking about. And he's like, okay, I get 5 days of therapy Monday, I should be coming home. We were hopeful that he was going to come home. I got calls from a discharge social worker saying, we're going to start getting your dad ready to come home, set up oxygen if we need to. I was like, great. And so that was something that I would tell him to reassure him. And Monday he calls and he FaceTimes me and he's mad. He's like, look at the date. I want to come home. I need you to come pick me up right now. And because it was day 5 and he thought he was done. And, he's got the mask on as he's sitting there screaming, like, come pick me up right now. I'm like, Daddy, you can't come home. Your lungs aren't healed yet. The doctor had already called me that day and said, that we're going to extend his therapy another 5 days. During that weekend and even following after that day, there were times when he told me he was scared. And I think that's what really affected me, is just hearing that, him saying, I'm scared, and me trying to reassure him that everything was going to be okay. And I said, Daddy, social worker has called me and we're going to bring you home. So don't worry, just let's get through the next 10 days and then we'll get you home. And the same thing with my sisters. He told them, that he was scared, and we were all just, we talked about it, said, let's just reassure him. Because this wasn't my dad's first time in dealing with a tragedy where he was hospitalized before. And we knew he was one of those who got scared because mortality for different people have different reactions. And he was one of those who always was like, this is it. And so that week, he got his 10 days and we would talk to him every single day. And then that following Thursday, so we are a full week in to the hospital. We get a call that Friday that my aunt had passed away from COVID. And we don't tell my dad either, because that Thursday night was the last time I actually got to talk, I say, quote, talk to my dad. I called him and, he was just so lethargic. He could barely open his eyes. I mean, my heart was just pounding. I said, something's not right here. And my sisters, we all tried to talk to him. And again, the nurse was just like, oh, he's just really tired. And we're thinking, oh, is it one of the medications he gave? Because he kept trying to pull the mask off. And we realized later that his carbon dioxide in his blood was really high at that point, and that causes loopiness in people. So that next morning, Friday morning, the day after my aunt had passed away, I get the call, because I was his healthcare proxy, that your dad, we can't bring his oxygen levels up. We're going to need to put a tube in him down his airway. And for me, being the daughter was one thing, but then being a pharmacist, I think I wore 2 hats. And it was a struggle at times because for family, I was that go-to person. So everybody's calling me, what's going on, explain this. So I had to put the pharmacist hat on. And so at the same time, the daughter hat couldn't fully express herself. And I mean, it would come out every now and then, but it was, I had to hold a lot in. And so he got intubated that day. And that, again, the last time we talked to him was that Thursday night. He spent 10 days in ICU. It was the Monday before, so fast forward, he's requiring a lot of oxygen support on the ventilator. I mean, I'm talking to the doctor every single day, call the nurse. I know they're getting tired of us, and because we're wanting updates. And it was something I didn't even tell my sisters and my family, was when my dad got into the ICU, the critical care physician, called me and said, well, I just want you to know there's only a 1 in 4 chance that your dad will make it out. And that was his experience. And for me, I was like, well, he's going to be Tom Brady. He's going to be that person who has a 99% chance of losing and still come back and win the Super Bowl. I was like, that's going to be my dad. And I wanted to maintain that hope. And so I tried to maintain that hope for my family. But I didn't want to tell them that part, because, again, people are going to react differently. So throughout the week, he didn't get worse, but he didn't get better. We got to see what his CT scan looked like. And again, the pharmacist, I worked in an ICU for 9 years. And when I saw what that scan looked like, I knew right away it was not good. And I tried to explain it to my sisters, but at the same time, give them some hope. I said, to them, his lungs are like a brick. It's trying to oxygenate a brick at this point. We got to just see if his lungs will heal on their own. But as the week went along, we got a call that he's not waking up. So about 5 days after he was in ICU, wasn't waking up. And, that's again, some panic for me because he was on blood thinners at that time as well to try to prevent clots. That's one of the things that COVID patients have a higher incidence of is developing clots. And so the pharmacist in me was like, oh, well, maybe it's just the sedation he's on, that it's still lingering, and because he developed kidney failure and it hasn't gone out of his system. I'm justifying everything I can in my head to try to make sense of everything. Had CT, weren't able to get it for 2 days, and then finally, I'll never forget that Friday morning I get a call from the physician. He's like, we've got the results, and again, this is something my mom doesn't even know, but my siblings do, is that he had multiple strokes. And at that point, it was there was nothing we could do. My brother had just happened to be sitting right beside me, and for him, he was struggling to accept this. I mean, for me as a pharmacist, again, I knew, and I called my sisters and said, "You need to come home right away. We as a family need to make this decision together." We already knew what my dad's wishes were. We had signed his living will earlier that summer. He made it very clear that he did not want to be on prolonged life support, that if he couldn't take care of himself, that he just didn't want to go through all that. So we knew his wishes, and it was all in writing, and we all made that decision as a family. And so, it took my brother, he wasn't ready, and we said, all right, we'll give you the weekend. Monday, we need to go in as a family because daddy's not coming home. And we know that there are other people who are waiting for a room, and let's take the weekend to give everybody a chance to say goodbye. So all day Saturday and Sunday, and the nurses were wonderful. The whole staff was great. They would set up a WebEx, and it allowed family members. I mean, we set it up to where family members call his siblings, nieces, nephews to say goodbye. My mom's side of the family. And then on Sunday, we spent a good 4 hours, just his friends, saying goodbye to him. Gave him that opportunity because, we couldn't even be there. And it was heartbreaking enough for us, but for, the tragedy around this, I still struggle because my dad was alone the whole time. And to not be there for him, that's something that still haunts me quite a bit. But that Monday we went in, we actually got a call saying, we're having problems keeping his blood pressure up. You need to come in now. We were planning to go in at 10. So we all jump in the car at 9 o'clock. We get there, we're strict protocol. Initially, they told us only 4 of us could come to the hospital. And we're like, well, there's, 3 of us could come into the hospital, and, 4. And there's 4 siblings and my mom. And you can't make us choose. So they were very nice and let all of us come in. And they said, you'll have to come in individually, and you get 15 minutes. And so 15 minutes to say goodbye to somebody. Again, it's, they were nice. They let actually my mom stay in the whole time. For 52 years of marriage, she struggled, and we all went in there and we said our goodbyes. For my brother, they allowed him to go back in afterwards, and after taking the tube out, to be with him until his heart stopped. And he wanted to be the one to be there for that. So, and so it was even the aftermath where we wouldn't let anybody else come to the funeral. We didn't want to make that mistake again of what happened after my aunt. And the struggle even with that, because we told family members not to come. We didn't want to risk anybody getting sick. Yeah. And for my mom, she struggled because she felt like she didn't get the support from friends and family, even though they were wanting to, but it was the siblings' decision to not to do this. We made that gut-wrenching decision because we didn't want anybody else to have to go through what we did. And for her, it was hard. I mean, we hated to do that, but that friends couldn't come over, that family, we just weren't going to take that risk.
So Hina, it was clearly hard on all of you. And for you to be the spokesperson, I mean, our hats are off to you for being able to do that and be that for your family. So there are a couple of things that we're seeing in the window. So take a breath and let me scroll through a couple of things and see if we can't answer a few questions. I'm going to read them out, so don't you worry about it, okay? But there are a couple of things in here I think that are really, you probably have a good way of commenting on this, and we'd like to know because you have this firsthand experience. And you know, if there's something I ask that you don't want to, then certainly I understand. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. So one of the things that's kind of important, and it's in a hospital situation, when they start bringing in the social workers for discharges or even other kinds of activities, did you feel that you were getting the social worker support as a patient advocate?
I want to say no in that sense. I think as somebody who's worked in a hospital for 9 years, patient advocacy is something that's still very much lacking in a hospital setting. And, you know, for someone like me who understands the lingo and things like that, I sit there and think about families that don't have that and who in the hospital is being the advocate. And again, that social worker just called me to get a copy of the living will and to just let me know that they were in the process of setting up discharging my dad. That was the extent of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Guy, did you have one of the questions that you wanted to pull out?
There's a kind of a technical one that the person asks, do you believe that having a pulse oximeter in your home could save a life?
About saving a life, I mean, again, that's not sure saving a life, but I think it's beneficial, especially in this time of COVID, to keep monitoring yourself, especially if you're feeling sick and if you've had potential exposure. It's good to have one around because, you know, in the aftermath, I've had friends whose family members have become COVID positive, and I said, make sure you have a pulse ox because you want them to monitor because the emergency rooms aren't going to admit you if your readings, the way it reads is the amount of oxygen that's in your blood. And if it's like 95, 96%, they're not going to touch you. Even if it's 93, 94%, they're going to say, we're going to send you home. We're going to watch you. But it's, you know, my dad was 89%. And so it's good because when you're at that point, if you're starting to continue to decrease and you're seeing that, that's when it's time to seek medical attention.
Yeah. So I'd like to open it up to the audience. Is there anyone who'd like to ask Hina a question directly?
I would. Hi, Hina, it's Nani. The
Hi.
question that I have is, since this happened, well, first of all, I want to know the aunt that passed away, was that your father's sister? Was it
Yes, it was.
Was it the sister he had gone to be with?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I'm so sorry for your losses.
Yes.
Has this changed the way that you all operate? I know you were probably very conscious of what you were doing and staying safe, but has it changed for anybody else? Are we not gathering? Or tell us about that. Tell us how things have changed.
Yeah, I mean, even within my own family. So my brother who lived in the house was a non-believer in masks. And my sister-in-law was. And so if you think about the 4 people living in the house, my sister-in-law was the only one who didn't get sick. And she wore a mask the whole time. Like when my mom came back sick and my dad, she wore a mask and my brother didn't. So when I went home that first weekend after my dad got admitted and I go in my brother's room, even then he wouldn't put a mask on.
Wow.
And because again, I took all my precautions and I said, you know, you're not being fair to me and your wife because you're exposing us, you're sick.
Exactly.
And it wasn't until after he got discharged from the hospital, he spent 5 days in the hospital, that he finally, I mean, now he's a big mask wearer. So it's changed him for sure.
Good.
I, as a healthcare professional, was already pretty cautious anyway.
Good.
But my mom, even now, I mean, they were really good all summer. So my mom and dad, I want to make this clear that my dad had lost his first cousin and her husband back in May to COVID. And that was the wake up call for them because, you know, early on, there were still so many theories and this was all a hoax. And even though we're trying to educate them and say, Mom, you know, you guys need to be careful. You're both diabetic. It wasn't until their deaths that they were like, yes. And so they stayed in a lot more. But then once the death happened to my uncle, where my dad's like, I got to be there for my family. You know, I wish my mom would have worn, so she was good about wearing masks, but we said, why didn't you wear a mask when you were in Florida at my aunt's? And she said, because nobody else had one on and I didn't want to feel different.
Really? Wow. Well,
And so at this point, we're all masked clearly. And now that you're hearing double masking, it's now where they're recommending double masking.
Exactly. I heard that just today. So good for you. And I hope that this helps so many people who don't believe that masks will help them to stay safer. I know that none of us are really safe from COVID, but you know, if we take the proper precautions, we're
Right.
safe. We're a bit safer than those who don't.
Right.
And before I turn this over, because I know that other people have questions, I'd like to ask, how did CNN find you? Was it because of the tweet?
Yes.
The tweets? Okay, because I know we found you from CNN. I was curious as to how CNN found you. So would you please share that very quickly about the tweets?
Yeah, so the way it all started was, you know, it was right after my dad's passing and I was in a lot of pain and I had a friend who said, you need to write it down, write it all down, what happened, how you were feeling. And so I put a very long tweet out. It was with a whole thread and it was called Diary of a Sad Woman, Why I Hate COVID. And it really went through like everything I went in a day to day. Like I put down every day what was going through my head, what was happening, what was going on with my dad. And it went viral. I had no idea how, like, I mean, I had George Takei, retweet it. And so CNN picked it up, actually, the local news station here in Atlanta, BBC. So I did an interview with the BBC World News as well. I did a radio interview. So CNN picked it up. They got in touch with me and said, you know, we want to talk to you about this. And Pam Brown, who was one of the anchors on CNN, they're like, you're going to be talking to her. And so I didn't know who Pam Brown was at that point. I just knew that, you know, they were going to talk to me. And so Pam Brown, it turns out, is Phyllis George's daughter. So if you guys recall Phyllis George, that is her daughter. She's a journalism major. And her mom had passed away last year.
Right, I remember.
And it was during the time of COVID. And so for you guys, you know, just so you're aware, when I interviewed with Pam, I didn't get to see her face. So I got a lot of comments like, you were so strong and how you held it together. I didn't get to see her. I was looking at a blank screen.
Right.
And I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea the emotions that she was setting and how it kind of made her think about what had gone on with her mom because she couldn't be there in the hospital. And so, you know, for me, I want people to think about the consequences, like thinking of others and your own family, that would you want your family to be there alone? Because that is one of the most heartbreaking things is that you can't be there, that they're there alone and they're scared.
Yes.
And that feeling that my dad must have had, you know, I'm never going to get over that.
Wow.
And so thanks to CNN, I'm trying to take this platform and share stories so that I hope somebody else learns and, takes that extra precaution in thinking about their family and themselves as well, not to go through this grief.
Thank you so much, Hina.
Yeah,
Hello.
thank you. This is great. So John, did you want to ask your question real quick and then Shirley? No, okay. Shirley, would you please ask your question?
Well, I just wanted to comment basically because she was talking about how people don't seem to understand how serious this is. And sometimes it's so surreal to me because I haven't caught it, although I have a nephew that did catch it. That was the closest that I'd gotten to COVID, but it just going down the road. My own son is upset with me because I won't let him come over, even though he knows better to do it because he's got kids and I don't want them to get sick. So we haven't seen them since this thing started, but yet I see people running around, seeing their families and stuff. And I get angry and resentful because they're doing it. I think they're so selfish. But then again, here we are today, and they're saying this new virus coming out, and it's just another thing they're saying to me now. I'm becoming immune to it, but I still don't dare go out there, without precautions. So
And that's key.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where we were talking about it earlier, because for me, I don't want my dad to be just a number. That is my goal. He should never be a number. But for other people who, I think, Guy, you said this, it's a statistic. Because unless you're not going to feel emotion unless you have personally been involved or, understand what it's like to lose somebody. And I mean, I remember, as just like you probably have friends and family, and even on Facebook, like, oh, I don't understand why I can't go to church. And it's hard. We are people who want to get together, but it's trying to think about others over ourselves, which sometimes I think that's what differentiates us, is that empathy. Not that they're bad people, they're not bad people, but it's just they have different priorities.
That well stated. So John had a question in the window that I think I'd like you to answer if you can. That is, his wife has COPD and her oxygen levels get down to 89% during her doctor visits. They give a breathing treatment. It comes back up to 92, 93%. He'd like to know if you can advise on a percentage that he should become alarmed at.
Sure. So is this John F. or John P?
John P.
John P. Okay. So she's being followed probably by a pulmonologist. And if this is something, because she's on oxygen at home, I'm assuming, nope, not at home. Okay. So if she's living in the 90s at home without oxygen, so what she looks like. It's going to be where you want to perhaps seek medical attention, is if you start noticing for her to be different. So acting different, where she may not be able to talk as well, have trouble breathing. You've been involved with COPD exacerbations, I'm sure, at this point, where she needs to go get seen and maybe get a round of antibiotics if she's got an infection or something like that. I would treat it like that there's something different. And she would know as well that this is not that normal, where if I just take that deep breath or use the machine to kind of blow in and out to kind of strengthen my lungs, that there's something else going on. But, for her, and I imagine you guys are being very cautious, and hopefully you're first in line to get the vaccine pretty soon, if not because of 1A, but because of underlying conditions, that you should be next.
Great, thank you. Guy?
Yeah, Hina, thanks for sharing your real world experience and then leapfrogging to help others with your narrative. And so this may be the obvious question, but what information and guidelines would you feel are critical to be followed to remain safe from COVID, based on your experience and other knowledge?
Right. And again, let's keep politics out of everything. But the CDC really, at this point, you want to follow the guidelines. You want to follow what the experts are saying. And so I'm here in Atlanta, and the CDC is in my backyard. And, it's very clear, whether you like him or not, but Dr. Fauci is a well-respected infectious disease physician, and trust what he says. And he's saying right now, we should still be cautious. We should be double masking. He has said that at this point. And so, John, your wife may have a little more problem double masking because it's harder to take in and to breathe in those. But then what are the other precautions you can take, whether she's going to put a face shield on along with just maybe a single mask, and then, making sure she doesn't touch her eyes and washing her hands. Because at the end of the day, I've always said that COVID-19, this is a big experiment in infection control, and we are dirty human beings. And clearly, I mean, it's just the way it's spread, and we're not doing a good job of containing it. So follow the CDC guidelines, follow those experts. Your local health department will probably have guidelines in place as well. The social distancing, I'm still maintaining, even after you get vaccinated, continue with that, because until we get a good chunk of the population vaccinated, this is still going to be around.
In our own house, I should just maybe volunteer a little bit. We have 5 people in a very small house right now, partially due to COVID driving people out of work. So they're all at my house. But one of them came down with a sore throat. And so we're all going, uh-oh. And so we're trying to isolate and trying to keep each other safe. And basically the sum of that was, had it been COVID, we would have all gotten it. I mean, there was really not much we could have done in such a tiny space. Anyway, so I don't know. It is a lot easier if you've got some space.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you may not be able to have 6 feet in a tinier space.
Yep, that can be a problem because you do have a family that's partly around you and they're handling the same surfaces. All you can do in that case is I think, do your best. Hina, wouldn't you agree? I mean,
Absolutely.
wash your hands often, make sure that you wash surfaces often,
wear a mask.
Be mindful about any kind of sneezing, coughing, or other expelling, and, not even face people when you talk to them, kind of face away, because that's part of at least what I have heard, helps to spread that. So
right, it's the aerosol. It doesn't linger around too long, but if it's in the vicinity. And again, even within my household, and my sister-in-law, she wore a mask the whole time. So it's taking that little extra precaution that if you're going to be around each other, I know it stinks, but if there's a concern, you've got that window where it's going to be contagious, and it's just that window that you really want to take that extra precaution for sure.
Well, it's kind of a moving window, right, Hina? I mean, there's guidelines, but it's still moving. It's not an absolute number.
Not an absolute, right? But they say 5 to 7 days is usually that window that you want to isolate. And it's, I mean, for me, I'm overly conservative, so I would still isolate for 2 weeks. Okay,
so Guy, did you want to ask another question, or?
I see John F. raising a hand.
Thanks, Guy. Hina, I was just wondering, how effective are face shields as compared to a mask?
Yeah, I think it's an added layer, because the mask, and again, I have one here, and they're recommending not to use cloth, and make sure they're like, again, a double layer, like a surgical mask or one of those N95s. So that's some of the latest that's come out. And so that's going to help prevent the inhalation part of it, or help at least decrease that, while the face shield will also kind of help capture it. But also, for me, I liked wearing the face shield because I'm somebody who likes to scratch their eyes and rub their eyes, and that's another way that the virus, I mean, it's just like a cold, right? You touch any kind of mucous membrane, that's how you get it. And so if there's any way you can quit from touching your nose, your mouth, or your eyes, that's a good way. That's a good way of infection prevention. So that mask actually does provide an extra layer.
The reason I'm asking is my wife is severely hard of hearing and relies on reading lips. So in the era of face mask,
right,
it's impossible for her to communicate with anybody. And when we're out, say at a doctor's office, I'm constantly pulling my mask down to tell her what people are saying.
Right.
So I'm thinking maybe I should just buy one of those face shields. But am I putting myself, let's say we go to the doctor's office or somewhere like that, because we don't go out much. Am I putting myself at greater risk in just using a face shield and no mask in those situations?
Well, again, I think the mask is for sure that you want to have that, but if you're going to have the face, it's both. You don't want to go one or the other, or if you're going to go with one, you want to go with the mask, but for sure the face shield is going to help, so that in that setting, you're going to have the mask, and whether you just continue to pull it down, but you need to continue to have the mask on as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they've got a fancy, expensive, transparent one somewhere.
Right.
I saw that somewhere. There's,
Or you're going to start writing everything down, and
you know, there is a good thing about COVID, which is that we are now in the 21st century, and we do understand about viruses. We got a vaccine in record time, and we've improved from the beginning, say 6 months ago. We've even improved treatments so that we are losing fewer people. So, you know, and man is supposed to be a rational animal, the philosophical definition. He's not. People are very emotional, and but the way out of this is through rationality. So if I get on my soapbox and say that, that's my opinion there. Rationality is the answer.
right.
I think one thing that's of value to go on with what you're saying as far as where we are at our point in time, and that is we're not able to be with your father when he was in the hospital, but you had FaceTime. So you had an avenue that was at least where for several days you could see him, for several days you could talk to him. And so, you know, that was a blessing that you were able to do that and that he was able to work the device. So
Right.
that was really good. I had one question I wanted to ask, and I'm sorry to jump on this because if anyone else in the gallery wants to, we'll pick them up next. But early on, you said that you were a participant in the Moderna COVID vaccine trial. So how is that helped you? And was the whole, I mean, did you complete the second phase? Because in between here, you started with your first part of the vaccine, and then you left town. So
Right. So I did. I actually got the vaccine in September. So I received both shots before all this even happened. And so I was completely covered. In the study, they're actually following us for 2 years. And they draw blood levels. So I actually went in for an appointment a couple of weeks ago where, so because Moderna got the approval, the emergency use approval, they brought all the participants in and asked them, do you want to know what you got? And if you didn't get, if you got placebo, we'll give you the shot and then we'll follow you. Because what they're doing is drawing my blood every couple of months to see, do I still have a response? Do I still have antibodies circulating? And that's what you want to do. I decided that I did not want to know what I got because, again, I'm smart enough. I'm a pharmacist. I know I got the real thing, and based on just the symptoms and side effects, so that they're gonna be able to get real data in a sense, so that when I go back in March, they're gonna be able to test my antibodies at a 6-month level and understand. All right, you know, here you are at 6 months. We're still maintaining antibodies because they're still learning. And what I recently read is with the Moderna vaccine, the people who are in earlier trials, they've asked them to come back for boosters. So is this something that we're going to be doing yearly with the flu shot? Perhaps, but maybe it won't be, you know, right now we're getting 2 shots, but going forward, it might be just 1 shot. And we'll have to see because we're all young here. So for us, we're able to maintain a good immunity, but they've seen in elderly, those greater than 65, that perhaps, and this is with every vaccine, that they don't mount as good of an immune response. So we don't know, are they going to require 2 shots every year?
well, and we don't have a good track record of even taking some of the vaccines that are available. It's less than 50% that even get a
Right.
flu shot annually. So
Right. And I just got certification in becoming a vaccinator. Again, I'm doing this for my dad. It was a little bittersweet, but I'm going to be starting to vaccinate nursing home patients in the coming weeks. And so, wanting to do my part there and helping to get everybody vaccinated.
Is that so? You're planning to go into nursing homes and oh, that's so great.
Yes. Again, it's an honor of my dad, and it's to do my part so that nobody else has to go through this.
Yeah. Oh, and Donna wants to know, what are the side effects when you get a shot?
Yeah. Well, if Donna, if you've ever had a flu shot, it's hit or miss. Some people have nothing. Some people just get a sore arm. Some people, and again, the flu is not a live vaccine, so the COVID vaccine is not live either. It's just a little part of it that's going to help your body recognize it if you ever get it into your system. And so, what you kind of want is to have some kind of side effect of feeling fatigue or maybe some pain, joint pain. That just shows that your immune response is revved up, that it recognized that vaccine and is creating antibodies. So, for those who say they didn't feel good afterwards, I'm like, that's great. You want that.
It's like the best news I've ever heard.
And it was the second shot for me that I have to tell you, I had the worst side effects. The first one was just some pain, a little bit of pain, nothing that Tylenol couldn't cure. And but it was the second one where my immune system was, yep, we're going all in. And I had joint pains, muscle pains. People say they feel like they're getting the flu after a flu shot. That's a good thing. Again, that means your immune system is revved up and it's recognizing it. And so I felt like that. I felt like I was in bed all day, took some Tylenol, and by the next day I was fine. So you want that.
So if Donna has a question for you she'd like to ask live, Donna, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, Hina. Thank you so much for being here with us. I've really learned a lot actually from you. The reason I asked about your reaction to the shot, I just want to make clear, I want to take the vaccine, okay? The truth is that I've had severe reactions to some vaccines.
Okay.
Tetanus shot, my whole arm became really, really red, very hot. It kept growing. The redness grew and grew and grew. I drew lines around it and it kept getting bigger, bigger. And I have tried to take the flu vaccines. I try to do the right thing. And the truth is that every time I've had them, I do get very, I really react. Like I'm in bed for like 3 days. It's crazy. So I'm a long-time allergy patient. I have a little bit of asthma as well. And I didn't ask this question. The doctor just volunteered, my allergist, immunologist, after they ran the tests on me, to see what allergies I had. He basically told me that I was in the upper 5% globally. Which was shocking. I had been actually very sick though, where I was to the point my allergies were so bad that I would get sick literally every other week. I would pick up something. And I ended up taking allergy shots for 12 years. So this is the real reason why I'm concerned about the vaccine. And I've read that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine thus far looks like it might be a little bit better of a fit for somebody like myself.
Okay.
I don't know if you, as a pharmacist with your background, if you happen to know anything else or if there's anything you can add to this, but I'm kind of a nervous patient right now.
Rightly so. I mean, you've had reactions in the past, and this is going to be a decision between you and your physician, right? Because it's usually the excipients or what else is in the vaccine that causes those types of reactions. And right now, I mean, from what I've read, reactions are rare, not zero, but they've had people who have had reactions. And since you've had arm swelling and things like that, and he's aware of it, that's something you will want to discuss. Because right now, what I'm understanding, at least with the Moderna and the Pfizer, is they have propylene. I think it's it's a PEG, propylene ethylene glycol, which just is a vehicle to help carry it and get into your system. But there are a few people who are allergic to that.
Mhm.
And so, it causes, but for you, it doesn't seem like you've had like anaphylactic types of reactions. It's really just more local. So that might be one of those things where, again, you have that decision why Johnson & Johnson might be a better fit is because it's only going to be one shot versus two.
Oh, okay. Okay. I wasn't clear what the deal was. Yeah, and my healthcare provider is a woman, and she looks to be roughly in her mid-30s, I think. I just met her. I just moved, and I just, established a relationship. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, she was really kind of angry that she had such a reaction. And I was surprised, as a patient, I was kind of surprised at her reaction to her reaction, So yeah, I just wanted to ask the question, see if you knew anything.
Yeah, so I think we should hear next week about the Johnson & Johnson one. So something to keep your eye on, but that's, again, it's only going to be one shot versus two.
Yay, thank you.
All right, does anyone else in the peanut gallery have some questions? Guy, I think it's up to you.
Oh, well, I have a comment / question for Hina. So as a pharmacist, during those dark days when COVID swept through your family and took your father and his sister, being a pharmacist wasn't really very helpful, right? It increased your stress levels, and you were keeping secrets from your family members, which it must have been super painful. And like even now, just nod your head, you're still dealing with that, right? You feel guilt and so forth.
I've been grief counseling. I mean, if that tells you anything,
Yeah.
where I had physical symptoms, and I mean, I'm very open about this. I got started on Prozac. I was having chest pains and stomach pains and back pains, the psychosomatic types of pains, that just the grief that it just overwhelmed me. And I went and sought help right away because, again, I think Guy, what I mentioned earlier, as the pharmacist and as his healthcare proxy, and everybody coming to me asking the questions, I was that point person. So I probably have some PTSD from it as well. And so, I mean, I'm taking the steps that I need to deal with this. And it's, I mean, again, at the end of the day, I have no problem discussing that I'm seeking help because I needed it.
Yeah, thank you very much for being so open and sharing these personal details, which is difficult and hard to make you relive those. And so we really, really appreciate your opening up to us.
No, absolutely. And one book that's, as you guys are sort of, again, love books. The book that's really helped me, and I'm going to recommend this to every healthcare professional. There's a grief recovery handbook. And we as a society are horrible on dealing with grief and what we think is the norm and what we should be saying and things like that. And it's just been I mean, because I'm reading this with my grief counselor, I get homework every week, but the book is just, I've given it to everybody in my family. And now that when I have friends who've had family members pass away, I give them the book because it really helped me in understanding grieving is different for every single person. It is not the same. And we can't treat it like it's the same for everybody.
So Hina, what's the name of that book?
It's the Grief Recovery Handbook. It's a purple little book, and it's on Amazon. And I think it's actually an Audible book as well. And I can send that over because I have it on my iPad. I'm one of those who's moved to electronic and don't hold a book anymore.
Very good. Hina, did you have any other parting words for us no, okay.
I mean, if anything, stay vigilant, stay healthy. You have loved ones around you. I don't let them, you guys are beautiful people, and thank you for listening. But the heartache, if losing one of you or even a family member that it's not worth it just to get through this little period of time. I know that, like, the socialization, that's part of us as a society as well. But to hear how many times a day I think about my dad and what if and what could have done differently, and it's just stay safe. If you have issues about the vaccine or question, talk to your physician, talk to a pharmacist. That's my big goal now, is to help educate, because as you said, Rox, the vaccination rates are low. And in order for us to have herd immunity and really getting people to feel safe again, you have to get at least around 75 to 80% of the population vaccinated. So it's going to take a big undertaking, and stick to it. What I'm telling you, a helpful hint for you guys is, if you have areas around you that are giving vaccines, and I've told friends, call them and say, if you have anything left over.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, for sure. Oh, we might have just lost Hina. We might be on internet pause there. In any case, Rox, it looks like it's time for us to wrap up anyway. But boy, this has been a very informative show. Before we go, we'd like to ask that you check out this segment's feature title, The Day the Lights Went Out, on Education, by author Nani Jules, whom you might know something about. This is a short micro read on the pandemic's impact on our kids' education, and we hope you'll get a copy if you haven't already. And the link to it is in the chat box, maybe over there, or will be soon. And yeah, we lost Hina, so we can't thank her.
Well, we can though, because hopefully she'll listen to a replay. So Hina, thank you again for taking time to drop in today to share your story and advise us on how we might combat COVID-19. Our hearts go out to you. You'll stay in our prayers, and we appreciate so much your spending time with us today.
Yeah, thank you again, Hina, and we appreciate your time. And audience, we sincerely hope you enjoyed our segment of Let's Talk About It. We hope we've left you with something to talk about. And I think we have. And this is very daily life thing. Welcome back, Hina. We were just wrapping up here.
Internet.
Yeah. So, of course, COVID-19 is a major issue, will continue to be a major issue for at least 6 months and probably longer. Anyway, join us again next month. We'll tackle another hot topic on the Let's Talk About It show.
And remember, if you miss an episode of Rave Waves, Let's Talk About It, you can always catch it via the archives directly from past Rave Waves show tab on the RRBC site. Thanks to those of you who joined us in the Rave Waves gallery today. I'm Rox Berkey.
And I'm Guy Worthy.
Be safe, try and stay well, and bye for now.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Hina.